With your look around the Air Force, I'm Senior Airman Angelo Rosario. Smartphone-based tech used by pararescue airmen is being adapted to help hospitals caring for COVID-19 patients. The tool was created to give medics the ability to monitor the vitals of multiple combat casualties using sensor data in real time. Staff at the Air Force Research Lab thought the tool could let medical personnel care for multiple patients remotely, also alleviating the need to change out personal protective equipment for individual patient checks. The tool is being tested now. Former Secretary of State and Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff General Colin Powell has some words of advice for airmen. He says good results can come from a little kindness.
I have found over the course of my career and the course of my life that you can make a lot of money just by being kind to the people who work for you. Be kind, even in the midst of a problem. Be kind. Always show kindness in one way or another, and people will do anything that you ask of them.
General Powell is the latest guest on The New Normal, a podcast created and hosted by Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force, Khalith Wright. You can see more from the entire interview with General Powell and other episodes of the podcast on the Chief's Facebook page. If the Air Force has its way, flying cars will soon be a reality. A new program called Agility Prime is the Air Force's effort to accelerate the growth and advancement of electric vertical takeoff and landing vehicles for government use. The program could have a huge impact on Air Force operations.
I see the flying car industry as game-changing when it comes to the future of warfare. If you start thinking about these devices as nodes in a network, it fundamentally changes the game.
General Goldfein also said the variety of devices that could be built would serve many needs, including moving supplies and people, and he believes flying cars would change the way combat search and rescue is conducted. And that's your look around the Air Force.
We fell in love with airmen. And then we went and married the Air Force. We must have been out of our minds. You are not normal people. Never have been. But then again, neither are we. Maybe that's how we found each other. Being an Air Force family is a sacrifice we share together. We have been through wars with you. We have been through marriages with you. And we're still here. We will move our families at a moment's notice. We will cope with the loneliness. We will accept the uncertainty, and we will be strong for you. For us. We will be single parents while you're deployed. We'll be single parents when you're home, because sometimes when you're home, you're not really home, and we know that and we love you, but it is not easy. Do we love this country as much as you? We have volunteered to have our world shattered and our hearts broken. Because we believe in the things you believe in, we are willing to sacrifice something we cherish more than our own lives. Your life. We live in the extremes, the highest highs, the lowest lows. We laugh more, we yell more, we feel more. And if we sometimes don't show it, well, we're not normal people, remember? We're an Air Force family. You will kiss your spouse, you will hug your children, and you will never for 1 second let your parents forget that you love them every single second of every day. Because just like every Air Force family there's ever been, we love you. We are so proud of you, and we will do anything for you, for this country. All you have to do for us is come home. Aim high, airmen.
Yeah, so the mission today was to assist with the Kanawha County Health Department in helping identify individuals within this facility who potentially could be exposed or suffering from this coronavirus.
This COVID crisis has impacted our operations greatly. We are finding a much greater need out there in our community. More people are coming to our pantries for food items. Since the National Guard has been here to help us with our increased demand, they have been a critical part of meeting that demand. What would take us about a week to accomplish, they do in 1 or 2 days.
Always there, always ready is one of the mottos of the National Guard that we take very seriously. That comes from our deep history of over 370 years where we say we're in the field, we're in the community, we work there, we grow our family there, yet we're always ready, always there when our nation or our community calls.
With the Guard, they have an everyday job, and then they do the Guard, a weekend a month, 2 weeks a year. But to be able to see them bring not only their Guard experience, but also their real life experience, it's been instrumental in being able to help meld the two between the Department of Public Health and the Guard.
One of the greatest things I've found is there are exceptional people we have working for the Air Guard and the Air Force and the DoD. And with leaders like we have in our military, it's an unbelievable experience for me where I see there is no problem, no situation, no challenge that could come to me right now that as a team within the Department of Defense, within the Air Force, and within the Air National Guard, we wouldn't be able to solve together or solve as they hit each one of our components or services.
I'd like to begin by thanking the men and women of the Department, across the Department of Defense, for their commitment to the mission and our nation's defense during these difficult times. I'd also like to take a minute to say thank you to the hospital workers, the medics, the first responders. As military members, people stop us all the time and say thanks for our service. It's now time to thank these heroes for their service.
So the Air Force career fields that are eligible on the enlisted side are space operations, obviously, and then our intel and cyber professionals. The rest of the enlisted Air Force specialties that aren't part of that list can be assigned to the Space Force as airmen, but the only folks that will transfer are intel, cyber, and space. For the next 2 years, we will still have folks, if they do not want what we're calling organic space operators, if they do not want to end their Air Force career, they will remain airmen assigned to the United States Space Force. But 2 years from this September, so September of 2022, after that point, there will not be space operators in the United States Air Force any longer. So all of those folks will have to enter into the normal retraining process, or maybe they're separating or retiring within those 2 years. So there's a variety of situations that might have someone say, I don't want to transfer, or I'm not going to. That's okay, but you won't be able to stay in the Air Force as a space operator beyond September of 2022. I think promotion opportunities in the Space Force is a little bit TBD. If you currently have a line number for promotion, or if you're currently getting ready to promotion test, we will work the timing of your personal transfer around those things. So nobody will get kind of caught in the middle. Everyone will be escorted through that process at a timing that fits. Same with special duty assignments, institutional requirements, schools, those types of things. all the same grades, pay grades that the rest of the services have, right? We're not ready to talk about what the ranks are going to be called yet. We've done a lot of crowdsourcing. I really appreciate everybody's ideas on that. And so we're working through what the ranks will be called. The grades will be the same. And so if you're a staff sergeant in the Air Force today, you'll come over and you'll be an E5 in the Space Force. Deployments shouldn't have any impact. Since the volunteering is done virtually, you'll still be able to raise your hand and say, I want in. We're probably not going to pull you back from a deployment just to transfer you. So this is where those details, right? If someone is on a deployment, we've got to look at how does that play out, and it may affect the timing of when you actually transfer. It will not hinder your ability to volunteer, and it won't be a factor in whether or not you're picked to transfer. We're not going to disadvantage somebody that's serving their country and deployed overseas. That won't be a disadvantage to anyone that's volunteering. Today, the Space Force, absolutely the nation, across all domains, in my U.S. Space Command hat, all combatant commands, we rely heavily on the Guard and Reserve components. We cannot fight wars without the total force. That won't change in the future. We don't know what Guard and Reserve forces might end up looking like. We're studying that. We've been asked to study it. It was part of the NDA, directed us to do a total force study. So we're doing that study, and a lot of people are working hard to figure that out. In the meantime, the Air Force components that have supported space in the past will continue to support space today, and we absolutely need them. We rely on them every single day. So just because we're thinking it through, I wouldn't want anyone to think that that we don't need them, or that we don't think we'll figure it out and have a way that there will be a total force presentation. I know that there will be. What we're asking is that if you come upon stumbling blocks, if you come upon questions that you can't answer and you want some help, some information, we're standing by to give you all the information that you want so that you can make the right decision. We want you in the Space Force. If you've got the opportunity, man, I hope you raise your hand, because I think we're going to have a really great time. I think it's going to be exciting future for all of us, and we'd love you to be a part of it. You know, starting 1 May, 41,000 people are going to get a MyPurse message and have a decision to make. And what we're hoping is that we're providing all the information, all the details that we can to help them make the informed decision that's best for them, that's best for you.
Some people look at the stars and ask, what if? Our job is to have an answer. We have to imagine what will be imagined. Plan for what's possible while it's still impossible. Maybe you weren't put here just to ask the questions. Maybe you were put here to be the answer. Maybe your purpose on this planet isn't on this planet.
Sign me up. That video certainly made an impression on me. You're previewing this video as it is released for broadcast across the country, inspiring Americans to find their purpose in the nation's newest service, the United States Space Force. General Raymond and I are here COVID compliant in our distancing, but the space that you see between us is not the kind of space we're going to be talking about today, but instead we're going to talk to the Space Foundation gathering. As space enthusiasts look to the stars and plan for the future, the Space Foundation leads the way. Experts and advocates like you are critical to the entire Department of the Air Force, but especially to the Space Force as we build a new service and greater capability. With the Space Force's heritage of space advocacy, we are pleased to join you today with the Space Foundation to update you on several advances that build upon America's legacy of leadership in space. You may appreciate that the Department of the Air Force is declassifying some information related to space. For instance, in the video we just played, you may have caught a quick glimpse of a space vehicle previously cloaked in secrecy, the X-37B. This reusable spacecraft has completed 5 missions with a total of 2,865 days on orbit. I'd like to tell you a bit about the X-37B's next flight. The Air Force's Rapid Capability Office has combined forces with the Air Force Research Lab and now the U.S. Space Force to execute a mission that maximizes the X-37B's unique capabilities. This important mission will host more experiments than any prior X-37B flight, including 2 NASA experiments. One is a sample plate evaluating the reaction of select significant materials to the conditions in space. The second studies the effect of ambient space radiation on seeds. A third experiment, designed by the Naval Research Laboratory, transforms solar power into radio frequency microwave energy, then studies transmitting that energy to Earth. So mark your calendar. The X-37B launches from Cape Canaveral in 10 days on May 16th. The Space Force dedicates this flight to the nation's first responders and frontline professionals who keep America strong. Today, investment in space and missions like the X-37B preserve free access to and use of the space domain for all benevolent actors. To that end, the Department of the Air Force submitted a dedicated space budget for the first time in history. $15.4 billion will be invested in transformational systems, including things like next-gen OPIR, replenishment of the nation's space-based infrared systems, 2 GPS-3 satellites, and 3 national security space launches. The Department of the Air Force is expanding international partnerships and alliances. A space coalition involving the US, UK, Australia, Canada, New Zealand, France, and Germany is building international rules base for establishing predictability in this new domain of space. And now, no stranger to the Space Foundation, Ward of Colorado Springs, Chief of Space Operations General Jay Raymond leads the new, lean, and agile U.S. Space Force, while also commanding U.S. Space Command. This defender of the ultimate high ground will leverage technology, reduce bureaucracy, and recruit the best and brightest minds to join an already talented team. In a few minutes, we will invite viewers to share your observations and questions. But first, Jay, would you share a few of your insights?
I sure will, Madam Secretary. Thank you so much, and thank you for your leadership. Tom Zellabor, it's great to see you again. Your introduction of our secretary was spot on, and I benefit each and every day from her strong and passionate leadership about space, and we appreciate it very much. Tom, it is great to see you again. It's great to be here with the Space Foundation. I can tell you in all sincerity that I would much rather be in Colorado Springs at the Broadmoor with about 15,000 of our closest friends and space enthusiasts talking about the critical issues and the exciting time that we face today in space. I truly look forward to the time when we're able to gather again in person in Colorado Springs. Fortunately, I think the call you made to postpone was a tough call, but it was the right call. Unfortunately, the space capabilities that we enjoy today allow us to do settings like this, and I really appreciate you providing us an opportunity to share some thoughts with those that are linked into this webcast and to your foundation. And just as Secretary Barrett discussed in her remarks, it is a critical time in space, but it's also an incredibly exciting time. There's advances being made in all sectors of the space domain, whether it's national security space, commercial space, whether it's civil space with the Moon to Mars program. I would also include international space. All of those sectors are seeing great strides and great movement going forward. And I will tell you, the foundation really helps bring all that together. And that's what I so appreciate about the opportunity to gather once a year there in Colorado Springs. International partnerships are critical to us, and we've made great strides in this area. To be perfectly blunt, years ago when the domain was benign domain and relatively peaceful domain, partnerships weren't that critical. They are absolutely critical today, and I couldn't be more proud of the partnerships that the Secretary talked about that we've developed with our allies, and this forum helps us do just that. Over the course of the past year, the United States has elevated national security space mission, both the warfighting mission and the organized training and equipment mission, to a level commensurate with its importance to our national security. And so we've stood up U.S. Space Command last August, who has a laser focus on warfighting. And we've the President established when he signed the National Defense Authorization Act on 20 December, the United States Space Force that's focused on organized training and equipping space capabilities to provide to U.S. Space Command to be successful. These organizations are so vital to meeting the demands of the National Defense Strategy that has us compete, deter, and win. I will tell you, we are competing and deterring and winning today, and we will in the future. Just within the past few months, we've seen Russia maneuver a satellite with characteristics of a weapon system in proximity to a U.S. satellite. More recently, they tested a direct ascent anti-satellite weapon. And just in the past few weeks, Iran attempted to launch an operational satellite and make a claim for becoming a space power. Clearly, the strategic environment has changed. We stand ready, as I said, to compete and deter and win today. And with your help, we will be ready and we will remain the world's leader in space. So thank you, Tom, and for the Space Foundation for this opportunity. I know the Secretary and I are really looking forward to a great dialogue, and we looking forward to some great questions. With that, back to you.
Madam Secretary General Raymond, thank you for those remarks and for that incredible video as well. That was amazing. As a quick introduction, I'm Thomas Dormy, Vice President for Washington Strategic Operations for the Space Foundation. And it's my pleasure to join you for this segment of today's event, a virtual fireside chat with Secretary Barrett and General Raymond about the future of the Space Force. We've got a number of questions on a variety of topics, and some submitted by our experts and others we've actually received in advance online. And as a quick note, for those that are watching live, feel free to join us and join the conversation and ask a question using the hashtag #AskSpaceForce. So let's go ahead and jump into the discussion. So, Madam Secretary? Madam Secretary General Raymond, to get us started, I guess a lot of people ask, historically the space mission, the mission of the United States Armed Forces has been executed by the United States Air Force. So why now? Why is now the right time for a Space Force?
Why now? No time like the present. In fact, I'd say it's none too soon. When we think about the things that General Raymond just spoke of that have to do with aggressive and warlike actions, threatening actions by space competitors, it's important for us to have an entity that is focused entirely on space defense and space capability. So it is, if anything, overdue for us to have a Space Force. It's really important that we have the Space Force up and running, and it's an important partner to the United States Air Force. When you think about how dependent Americans are on space, you think of everything we count on in navigation, information, and communications. You think of how everything, every day, almost every American uses space. But much of that system was built when it was a benevolent environment, a benign environment, a place that we didn't have to worry about threats. And so many of our systems are not defended and are vulnerable. And so it is important for us to deter aggressive action against American assets. But if deterrence fails, we need to be prepared to defend and if necessary, shoot back. So it is especially an important time for us to have space capabilities and a force dedicated entirely to that domain and to build doctrine for what is the actions that are taking place in space and what is fair behavior and appropriate behavior in space.
Yeah, Madam Secretary, if I could jump in, Tom, and on a little bit. You know, I've been an airman this weekend. Will be my 36th year in the military, 36th year anniversary in the military. And in fact, I share the same birthday, if you will, with the Space Foundation. I know your symposium originated in 1984. That's when my career originated as well. I've been an airman for all but about 4 months. And I've been a space professional in the Space Force since that time. I'm proud of that heritage. But I really view that we are at a strategic inflection point. We are at a point where our reliance on space is at an all-time high. And in the examples that I provided and the examples that the Secretary just talked about, there are threats. And this is an opportunity. We view this as an opportunity. This is an opportunity to remain the best in the world, to stay ahead of those growing threats, to make sure that every American has the capability that they rely on to fuel our American way of life, and that our joint and coalition forces have the capabilities that they need to be able to fight and win our nation's wars, to provide humanitarian assistance across the globe, like our forces are doing today, and helping the COVID response. So we view this as an opportunity. Space is critical, and this is a great way for us to advance our game.
So thank you for that. Hey, to kind of stay on a similar line, and Madam Secretary, General Raymond, you both mentioned partnerships, and just yesterday, Jim Bridenstine, the NASA administrator, mentioned close cooperation with the Space Force tracking near-Earth objects. And so on that theme of partnerships, how will the Space Force integrate with the overall national security space apparatus? Will it work directly in collaboration with other agencies such as the NRO, with NASA, even the FCC or FAA, Department of Commerce?
Well, absolutely. General, I'd invite you to add to this, but it is core to space that it's a cooperative environment. So, of course, the Space Force is working closely with NASA, as Administrator Bridenstine mentioned. Later this month, there's going to be a NASA launch, an exciting launch for the first time in almost a decade that an American rocket from American soil will launch American astronauts, including an Air Force officer and a Marine officer, to space. It's really a breakthrough moment for us, a return to leadership for us, but that couldn't happen without cooperation between NASA and the United States Air Force and Space Force. But the United States Space Force works cooperatively with others as well. We work with the Commerce Department, the FAA, of course, the FCC for communications items, and of course the National Space Council was pivotal to the establishment of the U.S. Space Force. So cooperation within the United States government is key to what the United States Space Force is achieving and will continue to be. is that we're all depend upon each other.
Yeah, I agree. Partnerships are in our DNA. We can't do this mission without our partnerships. We've worked very hard to enhance those partnerships over the past several years, and I put them in three areas. We worked very hard to enhance the partnerships with our intelligence partners, and I'll tell you, the relationship that we have today with the National Reconnaissance Office is the best it's ever been. We have shared strategies, shared CONOPS, we have shared operation centers where we work together, we have shared programs, and so that it's seamless as we both focus on protecting and defending those capabilities that are in the space domain. We have, as the Secretary mentioned, a broad array of partnerships interagency-wise that provide great advantage. I was just on the phone yesterday with Administrator Bridenstine talking about the event that he tweeted out. Again, it's not just on that. We have in the launch coming up at the end of this month, we have an Air Force astronaut that's going to be part of that crew that launches. We share some training capabilities with NASA, so there's a lot of partnership there. And then on the international partnership side, which the Space Foundation is so helpful to us on in bringing the global community together. We train together, we exercise together, we have again shared programs together. And I will tell you, we trust each other, and that's going to be so important. Just like we operate in any other domain, we are going to operate with our close partners.
So General Raymond, a quick follow-up on that, and you've mentioned a couple of times the importance of the international partners. So kind of looking at that, looking at security cooperation from an international perspective, how will the Space Force or perhaps Space Command in your other hat, how do they integrate with our coalition partners as a force multiplier? And do we have the necessary interoperability requirements established to be able to rapidly respond to something evolving in space?
So let me tackle it in two parts. Let me tackle it in both of my hats. In my U.S. Space Command hat, as a combatant commander, you have security cooperation as one of the critical missions of a combatant command. And so we have elevated that security cooperation with the establishment of that command. When we stood up U.S. Space Command, you may have noticed we renamed an organization that used to be, I used to command it, it used to be called the Joint Force Space Component Command. It's now the Combined Force Space Component Command. It's a combined organization with our partners being part of that. And that's a huge step forward. The focus of that is out at Vandenberg Air Force Base in California with the Combined Space Operations Center, where we have a combined operations center doing the business of our nations together. And that has provided us significant advantage. In our organized train and equip hat in the Space Force, the Secretary leads, we also are looking to partner with our allied partners on developing space capabilities that are mutually beneficial. So, for example, over this course of the last year or so, we have entered into a partnership with Norway to put hosted payloads on Norwegian satellites. That's going to save us about $900 million, and it's going to get payloads onto orbit quicker. We have a similar partnership with Japan, where we are putting a hosted payload on the Japanese satellite. As we build our command and control capability, we're doing that and developing standards with our international partners to be able to do that together as well. So I have seen over the course of the last 3 or 4 years a significant growth in our partnerships, and that security cooperation is critical to us.
A slight transition as you talk about some of the technology and capabilities, and we talked about existing capabilities out there. We hear a lot about NASA's technology, Perseverance, which is the new Mars rover, Ingenuity, the new Mars helicopter. And understandably, we don't sometimes hear a lot about defense capabilities and technology for obvious reasons. Is there anything you can share with us, or can you talk about any advances in space technology, space systems that Space Force will be using or focusing on in its budget in order to enable faster or more advanced technological capabilities?
Yes, I'd be happy to. One of the critical components of standing up the United States Space Force was to get after speed of acquisition, to be able to go fast, to be able to stay ahead of the growing challenges that we see in space. And one of the things the National Defense Authorization Act asks us to do is to take a look at the acquisition processes that we have and to come up with an acquisition process that's custom built, purpose built for space. And so we've done that, and that's on the final stages of coordination in being released. I think what you will see is we're driving unity of effort across the department. We're going to reduce bureaucracy. We're going to more effectively delegate down to lower levels to allow us to go faster. When you look at going fast, one of the things that we're also doing is making a shift towards software and being able to be more agile and being a digital service that can move at speed. So we have software factories, if you will, that are out in Los Angeles helping us develop apps that can go onto ops centers, and they're going faster. If you look at what we're doing in the space domain, I think it's twofold. One, we're looking at how do you have distributed architectures for more resilience, and at the same time, we need to make sure that they can conduct the mission and that we can protect and defend those capabilities. And so I'm very excited with where we are in this process. I think we're already seeing gains even in the short 4 months since we've stood up. I would suggest here mission capability that are defendable, that can move at speed with software technology and with an organization structure that allows us to go fast and delegate down to lowest level.
I would just add that under the leadership of Chief Raymond, we're seeing new breakthroughs in technology and investments in technology, from energy to materials, all kinds of technologies. It's really exciting to see and almost boggles the mind to think of the ways that these new capabilities will be applied.
So, Madam Secretary General, thank you for that. So on that same kind of note, but maybe transitioning a little bit, tremendous capability, obviously for the defense and for intelligence. But right now across the country, COVID-19 is on the minds of Americans, is impacting us in many ways. Has the Space Force, or how is the Space Force supporting the nation's response to COVID-19 and helping out in this pandemic?
As is the case with so much of society, space is integrally involved in the solution to our COVID problems. And I think, Chief, you want to go into some detail on some of what we're doing there.
Yes, Madam Secretary. So first of all, I would say, what we're doing is we're playing by the guidelines. We're staying, following the rules, wearing masks, to being COVID compliant. And that's critical to us because we have an obligation to keep the space capabilities up and running for our nation. And we have to do that without fail. And so we've taken very active measures to protect our crew force, our personnel, so they can go onto the Ops Center and operate these capabilities. We've seen examples like in any humanitarian assistance operation where space capabilities play an important role, whether it's communications, whether it's GPS with position navigation and timing and knowing where our medical community is inside, for example, New York City and the hospitals, make sure that we can protect those folks as well. We've also optimized bandwidth to allow the Navy hospital ship off the coast of California to have the bandwidth it needs to do to support its mission. So first and foremost, we're protecting our people so we can continue to provide the nationally critical capabilities that our nation relies on in the full spectrum of operations, from humanitarian assistance to combat. And we're optimizing those constellations based on requests from Northcom and others to provide them the capabilities that they need.
Thank you. So even with all of this going on around us, and this question actually comes online from our online audience, we've got so much going on around us, and it shouldn't be missed that we're actually standing up a brand new military service, as we pointed out at the opening. And this hasn't happened since the 1950s. I mean, it's truly historic. So the question is, that it's been submitted is, in this century, the 21st century, how do you best recruit, prepare, and train the next generation of space warfighters? What are the skills and talents that the Space Force is looking for to have within its ranks?
Shall I start? Well, we start with the recruiting video that was broadcast just at the beginning of this discussion. This is sort of the debut. That recruiting video will be put online and broadcast starting today as a method by which the United States Space Force story gets told. So we're now seeing an effort to talk to the folks out there who would like to be a part of an exciting new happening place where if your place in the planet is off the planet, the United States Space Force may be the place for you. Recruiting will be to the public, but it also is, as you may have seen, on April 18th, the United States Air Force Academy graduated its first class that had 86 cadets that were commissioned into the United States Space Force. So that is the logical and predictable location from which some recruitment would occur. But we're looking for people who have STEM backgrounds, as you would expect, but also in other diverse fields of study to build an entity from the ground up that is in the exciting business of exploring, defending, and applying capabilities in space. So it's a very exciting time. And what has happened so far is that recruitment hasn't been a problem. If people find out that there's a possibility of joining the Space Force, there seems to be an avalanche of applicants. So, Chief, you might have some detail on that.
Yeah, it's a good challenge to have, but we have more people knocking on our door wanting to come join us than we probably have positions to have. I mean, this is, I guarantee you can go down the hall and look at my email, and in the first 100 emails, there's probably 15 or 20 that will say, hey, how do I join the Space Force? The Secretary talked about the Air Force Academy class. Those 86 cadets are really the foundation of this as they come onto the books of the Space Force. They're incredible, talented folks. We've got 2 of those cadets going off to Harvard for a master's degree. We have another cadet that's going to MIT Lincoln Labs for a master's degree. We've got some of the best software talent that came out of the academy, and so it's a good challenge to have. We see a ton of interest in. We're excited for the future.
That is definitely a great problem to have. Is an overwhelming number of people, and our congratulations certainly goes out to the 86 new Space Force officers. So here's a follow-up question that just came online. It's actually a pretty good one. So with standing up the Space Force and the personnel requirements you need, the question is will there be a reserve component to the Space Force? And if so, will it be possible for the other branches of reserves, and this gentleman's in the Navy clearly, for example, the Navy reserves, to transfer into the Space Force's reserve component?
Yes, there will be a reserve component. We operate today very closely with the Air National Guard and the Air Force Reserve, if you will. The National Defense Authorization Act that established the Space Force asked us to do a study and to review that total force participation going forward. And we're doing that, but we rely on those people and those capabilities today, and we will in the future. We fully expect to open this up to other services. Today, other service members can volunteer to join, and with the support of their service, can apply and transfer over. And in the future, I think there'll be greater opportunities as we look to build unity of effort across the department and expand this more fully to the other services as well. But I think there's great opportunities.
Maybe it's important to say that while being a member of the Space Force requires transferring in, giving up what uniform you might have worn before and coming into the Space Force, there also will be opportunities where people from the other services work in Space Force billets as an assignment, but not becoming a member of the Space Force. So
yes, ma'am. So there's a lot of flexibility.
Yeah, we'll be looking for talent, and there'll be a diversity of uniforms. Many of them will be Space Force uniforms, but the 16,000 who became a part of the Space Force team on the first day, on December 20th, they wear a different uniform, but they do Space Force work, and they are in Space Force jobs, though they have not transferred into the only then starting up Space Force organization.
Yeah, so if you look at for example, the question that came up before on the 86 cadets, to give you a feel for what they will do. So of those 86 cadets, 50-ish of those will go off to do space operations. There'll be others that will be engineers. There'll be acquisition professionals. We've got cyber professionals. We've got intelligence professionals. We've got software engineering talent that's come in. So this isn't just the space operations piece of this. This is a set of career fields that come together. And again, as the secretary said, we have 16,000 folks today assigned to those jobs, and as we build the scrolls, if you will, of the Space Force.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, making strong progress so quick. So I'm going to transition us now, kind of the operational environment and current threats. General Raymond, you spoke about some of those threats. So how will the Space Force and the United States compete in this new warfighting domain against adversaries such as China, Iran, and Russia?
Well, first of all, let me just state that we do not want to get into a conflict that begins or extends into space. We want to deter that. The way you do that is to do that from a position of strength. What gives us a position of strength is our partners, and to develop those strong partnerships that are so important to us. And we talked a lot about that earlier in the conversation. We also need to have systems that are defendable and that are more resilient. We have to continue to train our operators to be to have the warfighting skills necessary to accomplish this mission. And that's really a two-part challenge. It's developing space operators that have a warfighting mindset, but it's also developing more traditional joint warfighters that have a better understanding of space. And the Space Force and the U.S. Space Command will be in good positions to be able to do that. We've completely overhauled our training program, and how do we develop our goals? I think the other key thing that we will have in being able to compete is to look at our classification structure and figure out where we may be a little too overly classified and what capabilities we should talk about, what capabilities we should message. And then finally, we want to develop modes of behavior. We want to do that with our partners because, again, going back to my first statement, we don't want to get into a conflict that begins or extends into space. We want to keep that domain safe for all. We will do that from a position of strength, and we will do that with our partners.
So on that note, a bit of a follow-up, and you mentioned some of the adversaries, the Iranians and the Chinese out there with some of their capabilities that they've introduced. How concerned should the American people be with these recent developments, and how is the Space Force positioning to address aggressive actions against some of these actors?
Go ahead.
I think the average American needs to understand just how reliant their life is on space. Space fuels our American way of life. Space also fuels our American way of war. And I would suggest to this audience that we are the best in the world at space with our partners, and that with the U.S. Space Command and the U.S. Space Force, we will remain the best in the world at space, and we'll be able to go fast as we talked about earlier. So our job is to make sure that American citizens don't have to be concerned. That typically when you walk in a room and you turn on the light switch, space is always there. That needs to be the case in the future as well. That's why the establishment of both the U.S. Space Command and the Space Force are so important. We have the best people in the world. We have the best capabilities in the world. We have integrated space like no other country. We have the best partnerships in the world. So we're in a good position, and we're only going to get stronger.
Thomas, maybe the launch later this month is a metaphor for America's leadership. Everybody has the image of man walking on the moon 50 years ago, when it was America that was clearly in the lead. For the past 9 years, if we want to go to our $110 billion investment in the sky, above the sky, in space, we had Biaseat from the Russian Biaseat and Soyuz. And the United States had to use that as their method by which we get to our space station. Later this month, that's going to be reversed. We're going to have American, and in fact, commercial American access to space. It's an important time in transforming America's role in space and returning to that leadership that we once knew.
So thank you for that. So I've just got a very interesting question from our live audience, just tweeted in, and so we've got some respected people actually watching today. So this is from Neil deGrasse Tyson's. Not all I'm sorry?
Former board member of the Space Foundation, as I recall.
He was. So we've got a lot of alumni participating today in various ways. Not all threats, as he puts it, not all threats to our space security involve political adversaries. Asteroids, of course, put us in Earth at risk, but also solar flares and space debris put our assets in risk, our space assets at risk. Will there be active elements of the Space Force used against these threats?
Yeah, so Neil, if you're out there listening, it's good to chat with you again. If you recall, when I interviewed with you in your New York office, after you asked me a series of questions, I asked you a question on what should we be focused on, and this was the area that you said we should be focused on, and we are focusing on it. In fact, again, in partnership with NASA, we had that conversation over the last 24 hours. We are committed to keeping the domain safe. We act as the space traffic control for the world. We provide warning and assessment of every object against every object in space to make sure things don't come. We actually warn adversaries that they're about to hit a piece of debris that they created to make sure that more debris isn't created. So we are committed to the safety of the domain. On the asteroid front, we have the best space domain capabilities in the world. We have strong partnerships with NASA. Administration Stein and I have committed to increasing that partnership going forward, and look to put some focus on that inside the Space Force. Thanks for the question.
Let me take an analogous response to that. COVID was not what the United States military trains to respond to, but the United States military was among the first calls from the White House and from HHS when COVID was becoming a big concern. When we needed to get American citizens out of Wuhan and return them to the United States, they called the United States military to do that. So it is important that while what we often think about are malevolent behaviors, competing political forces, it is really important to recognize that it is also natural forces that the United States military is called upon to defend against.
I think that's a great point. We're close to the close, and although we've had several questions coming in, I would be remiss if I don't ask this one because it's the number one that seems to be sent in from over the online questioner. So, the Netflix and the new series, The Space Force. Have you seen the trailers, and what advice would you give creator and star Steve Carell and his castmates on the show? And I've actually got one of my own. It's on kind of culture. They're starting to develop an entire culture there. And one of the questions we've got online is, are you going to try to steal their anthem as the official Space Force anthem?
Kokomo. We're all into Kokomo. Gee.
So I have seen the trailer. The one piece of advice I'd give Steve Carell is to get a haircut. He's looking a little too shaggy if he wants to play the Space Force chief. I'll tell you, it was funny. Probably a year ago, I was at home and I was looking at my bank account and I saw where dollars were being taken out for Netflix. And I'm like, at the time, and please Netflix don't come after me, but I didn't watch Netflix. And I said, why am I paying for this every month? And I said, I'm going to stop. I cut it off. And within about 32 seconds of stopping that, all three of my children from all over the different places in the United States came up on the net and said, hey, what happened to Netflix? Well, they were clearly watching it. And so immediately put that back on. And then about a few months later, one of my daughters texted me and said, hey, Space Force is really getting big. He said, Netflix is going to do a show on SpaceFlix and Steve Carell is going to play it. And I said, that can't be. It doesn't look like me. And then there was this thing going on Twitter on who should play the Secretary of the Air Force, who should play the Secretary of Defense, who should play General Raymond. And the leading vote was Bruce Willis. So I was hoping for Bruce Willis, but Steve Carell's a great actor. And I'll tell you, I love his show. So we're looking forward to watch.
Seems to me that it's just further evidence that space is where things are happening. So whether it's Netflix or in the United States Pentagon, space is where things are happening.
I think that's true. Everybody wants to be part of this new movement. So So that kind of brings us to the close. Madam Secretary General Raymond, this has been a great discussion. Really appreciate it. But before we go, I want to give you one last opportunity to make any final comments.
Well, I would just make two quick comments. One is thank you to the Space Foundation. For decades now, I have been proud to have an association with the Space Foundation, and I'd like to just acknowledge the leadership the Space Foundation provides in bringing people who have an interest in space from around the world together through one giant symposium, but through other elements throughout the year. The other point I'd like to make is the United States, and especially the United States Department of the Air Force, is indeed fortunate to have someone of the talent of Jay Raymond to lead the startup of this historic occasion. Whether it was Plato or Socrates that said the beginning is the most important part, we couldn't have a better leader for the beginning than who we have with General Jay Raymond.
Well, thank you, Madam Secretary. Again, thank you for your leadership.
My pleasure.
I also want to thank the foundation. I've got a close tie to the foundation, having spent the vast majority of my career in Colorado Springs, and with the benefits that that symposium gives us. And I look forward to participating in it when you reschedule it here later this year. I would say for the audience that might be listening, those that might be space experts, on the other end of the spectrum, maybe those that just have an interest in it. There is no more critical time or exciting time to be in our business. And if you are interested in serving, we're interested in having you. So please reach out. There's the Space Force website that's out there that can give you information on how best to get in contact with the team. But we'd love to have you on our team. Again, thanks for the opportunity to chat today, and we look forward to seeing you in person when we get an opportunity to do so.
Well, Madam Secretary General Raymond, thank you so much for joining us. This has really been a great discussion and a great way for the Space Foundation to kick off our live webinar series. We appreciate your time. We know how busy you are. We truly appreciate your time today, as well as your candid comments and insights. And having you on the program today has been remarkable. Thank you from all of us.
Thank you.
I also want to thank everyone for tuning in, especially those that were participating using our hashtag AskSpaceForce. You can continue to use that to join the conversation. As a reminder, this event will be posted online for later viewing at spacefoundation.org. We'll share the link of this recording with the registrants via email. So please feel free to watch again and to share that with those that were unable to attend today. Thank you for joining us. From all of us here at the Space Foundation, stay healthy and have a great day.
I expect there will be decisions regarding legacy programs and future modernization.
General Charles C.Q. Brown talks about the challenges facing the next Chief of Staff of the Air Force. As the nominee for the position, he appeared before the Senate Armed Services Committee as part of the confirmation process.
If confirmed, I will continue carefully consider risk assessments, balancing the Air Force's support to current combatant command requirements while investing in capabilities to prepare us for future competition, conflicts, and challenges.
General Brown is currently the commander of Pacific Air Forces and across his career has commanded a fighter squadron, 2 fighter wings, and U.S. Air Force's Central Command. During the hearing, he said he supported meeting the National Defense Strategy, expanding the Air Force to 386 squadrons, modernizing joint warfighting capabilities, and ensuring the well-being of airmen and their families. That's today's Air Force News.
My message to airmen is to just really more than anything, just to say thank you for stepping into the breach, stepping up when the nation needs us most, and a thanks to our families as well, who support us and take care of us so we can take care of the mission.
thank you for standing watch for all of us. These are some tough times for all of us and all of our families. And I just can't tell all of our airmen how much I appreciate the hard work that they continue to do to keep us all safe and to keep our missions flying, to keep the Air Force moving in the right direction and being able to do the things that we've always been able to do. So thank you to all of them, and I want to say thanks to their families as well.
I started this Air Force journey at 17. I kind of received a lot of negative feedback from a lot of folks about how I would do in the military or how I would do at a military institution for college, and I think I'm most proud that I didn't listen to them and I did it anyway. And when I was in high school, I was just kind of in a very turbulent time in life, lots of change. And my mom pretty much told me, she's like, look, if you want to go to college, you're going to have to figure it out. My mom is a legacy employee of American Airlines. She was talking one day outside of the cabin and one of the pilots overheard her. He was a retired Air Force officer that graduated from the Air Force Academy. So he told me about it, and we actually took a trip out there, and I just fell in love with it. I fell in love with the idea of it, of having a meaningful life, of having an education that directly translated into a job, and I was just ready. I was like, let's do this. It's game time. I thought I wanted to fly planes and show up at the Air Force Academy and realize I really hate flying things. When I came across the civil engineering department, I just loved the people. I go, you know, if I'm going to do this for 20 years, these are the people that I want to be around. So my first duty station was Vandenberg Air Force Base. Being at Vandenberg, really got to understand utilities and how that impacts mission assurance. And then my deployment, having the opportunity to be a flight commander with a very close-knit, small team, gave me a much greater appreciation for what officership's really about. I currently work as the officer in charge of operations engineering, and it's an element that links our operations flight to our engineering flight. Asset management falls under me, work management, which is the legacy customer service unit. Service contracts falls under me, as does material control. Asset management is really important just because if you don't manage your assets and your base, then your mission's not going to go as smoothly as it should. You want to invest the correct amount in the right asset to make sure that we're benefiting our personnel in this country. I've also had the opportunity to lead our Readiness Challenge team, taking them down to Tyndall. And so my role was to make sure the right personnel were going to represent our squadron well, and that they were prepared to execute some wartime tasks down there. It was amazing knowing that I was helping make history for the Air Force Civil Engineers. I'm proud to be a civil engineer officer just because of how many different types of expertise I get to oversee. Understanding how you impact the national defense strategy, our country's security, keeping internal to our borders safe as well. I got the opportunity to do Hurricane Michael recovery. And I think the Air Force enterprise enjoys having civil engineers around because we're organized and we're taught to think through a process. So the fact that we're a part of an organization that takes that so seriously makes it pretty amazing. Somebody told 18-year-old Morgan that I was going to go through all of this, I would have looked at them and said, "You're crazy." So that's why we don't know. If we did know at the beginning of what everything we'd have to go through and be able to make it. I think I'm just most proud of having the courage to start all of it and just not giving up. My name is Captain Morgan Grohl, and I'm a United States Air Force civil engineer.
So this is the first class that's gone through all of our procedures since the COVID crisis began. And you made it. I will tell you that I stand here today as the 21st Chief of Staff because of the courage and the tenacity of airmen who stood where you are standing. Sacred duty. This is what you signed up for. To support and defend this great experiment called democracy. So today is your day. It's your family's day. And it's our Air Force's day. And on your day, I have one question for you. Are you ready to join the ranks of the world's greatest Air Force? I think you're ready, and I can't wait to serve with you.
Good morning, everyone, our distinguished guests, and of course, the United States Air Force Academy's graduating class of 2020. This is a community that we would normally welcome to Falcon Stadium and help us celebrate the accomplishments of this incredible class of leaders. But under the current circumstances, we are honored to have your support from wherever you may be tuning in. These exceptional young leaders in the 62nd graduating class of the United States Air Force Academy start their careers. And I am confident that they will take our air and space forces and make them their own. To the parents, friends, families, loved ones, our local leaders, community leaders, and everyone else watching this today, thank you for your unwavering support.
What's going on today is to seek to get a better picture of how safe our flight crews are if they're transporting patients that may have COVID-19 or passengers. The ultimate goal being to minimize the risk and exposure to our flight crews, as well as, if possible, minimizing the risk of exposure to other passengers that may be aboard the aircraft. So we're here today, despite the pandemic, bringing people from all over to be able to get this testing done to make sure that the crews and the passengers we carry will be as safe as possible to help minimize the risk of this pandemic to our crews that still have to fly the mission and protect our country and protect each other.